Good day, everyone. Welcome to Blacklogic. Now, this isn't theory. This is what undercover work looks like when it actually prevents bloodshed. Today, we're going to react to FBI agent Scott Payne, an undercover operative who helped infiltrate and stop members of the base, a neo-Nazi network that was training, arming, and plotting to kick off a race war in American streets. These aren't internet trolls. These are people buying land for whites-only compounds, building ghost guns, training on private property, and talking out loud about murder plots and ethnic cleansing. Scott Payne and the teams around him moved in, gathered the evidence, and stopped plans before they became headlines. We'll pause at key moments. We'll translate a lot of the code words, show you the red flags, families that has been missed, and explain how these groups recruit lonely men into violence, mostly those incels. This is how hate looks up close, and this is how it stops when people do their job. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start this video, ladies and gentlemen.
Because at one point you met with these two guys, Patrick Matthews and Brian Lemley.
Yep.
These are Boogaloo boys?
No, they were members of the base.
Because that's the base.
They were training for the Boogaloo. So that's where the confusion happens, because in the militia.
Now, I just wanted to explain what the base is. The base is a structured neo-Nazi network. When he says they were members of the base, you hear organized, trained, and committed. That's not a backyard club. That's a very executionist cell that they're looking at.
Movement, anti-government, illegal movement. They say Boogaloo too. And you've got Boogaloo boys, or the big luau boys, or you see the flowered shirts is just another way to say Boogaloo. That is over here, but the base members, the guys, Brian Lemley and Patrick Matthews, they were base members, but they were wanting to kick off, again, like everybody. They want to accelerate the downfall of society. There's not a lot of forethought or afterthought in these people. In the base, we were looking at property in the Appalachian Americans to buy up, to make our own compound, our own ethnostate. There was another.
I really want you guys to listen in, because when extremists scout property, they're planning permanence, right? Self-contained enclaves. We're talking about logistics and ability to train and hide. That's how ethnostates begin very, very quietly. Go up into the Appalachians Mountain, where no people really wants to go up into unless you're a hiker or anything like that. But they will buy up all this property as training grounds and also recruiting grounds and train people to basically start up these ethnostates, which results in race wars, no less.
Cells up in the north and Midwest that were looking at the Upper Peninsula of Michigan to set up a compound. Nazaro had land in the Pacific Northwest to set up. And again, everything kind of ends with your own ethnostate.
Well, right. Because in the Ozarks, they have this whites-only town they built. You know about this, right?
It doesn't surprise me, but okay.
Yeah, and what they're trying to say is that, well,
I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. It was a private community excuse. It's old as segregation, right? Because even when Black people couldn't live amongst white people, right, before integration, there was segregation, and Black people were doing just fine by ourselves. But integration happens, and look at the Black community now. I'm not blaming white people for some of the things that the Black community is facing and some of the things that we're going through. But I can definitely tell you that integration did not help. Now, when someone creates exclusionary towns, like a white-only town, it's not just ideology, it's infrastructure, it's for segregation and eventually violence. Don't be fooled by the word private, because some people are like, no, they just want to be amongst themselves. They don't want to be around nobody but themselves. No, it's usually a bigger plot than what the regular public may see.
Oh, there's nothing illegal about this because it's a private community. There's no state funds.
That's their compound.
And, it's a private club. We can invite who we want. Now, Blacks and Jews are not allowed, but this is the type of thing that's kind of popping.
I really want to talk about this very briefly, and this has nothing to do with this reaction when he said Blacks and Jews are not permitted. Now, we understand that Jews come from all races and demographics, but in these terms, and today, when we talk about Jews, it's mostly people who derive from Israel, and that usually may even look like a Vlad. Vlad is actually Jewish, but he looks like a regular white man. Now, if a Jewish person is not coming out of a synagogue, if a Jewish person is not wearing, I don't know the right terminology of the little headpiece they wear here or have their hair a certain way, how can you tell a Jew from a regular white person? Because Jews can hide in plain sight, Black people can't.
Up. But with the two guys you mentioned, Patrick Matthews and Brian Lemley, they're actually looking to kick off a race war at a gun rally in Richmond, Virginia.
Yes.
In 2020.
Yes.
And you stopped them from doing this.
Yes. So as the case was, as there were so many different plots going on, and luckily for me and all the teams involved, because it definitely takes a village. I was the undercover, but there are tons of people working behind the scenes and covering me.
Let's just briefly cover that, because a gun rally is the perfect public staging crowd. We're talking about you have the crowd, you have weapons, you have a provocation, ignite one, and chaos follows. That's the playbook. Use a public event to give a violent fantasy an audience in cover. That's what they're referring to.
As well, we had uncovered several murder plots being planned by the Georgia cell. I guess you want to call it the Delaware cell, because that's where they were at the time. Pat and Brian and some others were thinking that, what if that is the kickoff of the Boogaloo, that gun rights rally in Virginia? What if that's the kickoff? So imagine case teams and us as law enforcement trying to figure out, okay, how do we slow this down? But we got to make sure we got enough evidence, because we want to make sure we've got an airtight case to prosecute. And all that was coming down to the wire. Like, okay, when do we take it down? When do we not? And we had learned of several murder plots of the Georgia crew. And we had learned that Brian and them were planning some pretty bad stuff. And the Baltimore, FBI Baltimore, the case agent and the assistant United States attorney up there, man, they kicked butt.
We need 1,000 more agents like this gentleman right here. Great work to him. I applaud him at every turn, because he was stating that multiple murder plots that were going to occur. And this means it wasn't a lone wolf fantasy. They did these gun rallies to recruit people, get them all charged up and powered up, and basically turn into an anti-whatever. We're going to create our own ethnostate. This is coordination. That's why undercover infiltration and evidence gatherings actually matters. Without that, fantasies become tragedies. So again, I take my hat off to this very brave young man here.
Wiretap on Pat and Brian's apartment. They had got an apartment next to them, and the stuff they were intercepting. I mean, I'd heard them say plenty of crazy stuff. I spent a lot of time with Pat. And I mean, Pat would just say, like, I mean, he would get teary-eyed and say that when the Boogaloo happens, if you're not fascist, that automatically makes you anti-fascist, and the penalty's death. And he would say, I'm going to give my dad a chance, but I may have to put a bullet in my dad's head.
Really?
Yeah.
He was
Wow. These people are 1,000% serious. When someone says they kill their own family for an ideology, you're not dealing with rhetoric. That's more so of a Hitler's mindset. You're dealing with moral breakdown. Just because you do not agree with my terms, and you're even my blood, you're my father, you're the one who gave me life, you're willing to kill me over my views versus your views, because we believe your views are in the best interest of yourself, your faction, your group, your extremists, but let alone we got to say the country. Your views in the best views of this country and how this country can move forward. That's how obedience to hate replaces every human bond. Your ideology and your commitment to hate, that's obedience to replace every human bond, even your father.
No, Dad.
More than once he said that.
Wow.
Yeah. And you know, and some of the other ones would be like, I mean, I could do it if I had to, but I'd probably ask somebody else to do it because I'd cry myself to sleep every day. And then another one would be like, well, you guys are farther along than me because there's no way I could kill my parents. But yeah, they were planning. I mean, some of the stuff they were intercepting, Brian and Pat doing, I keep wanting to call them by their code names. Brian was Can't Go Back. Pat was Punished Snake. And I was Pale Horse, which is the title of the book.
Behold a Pale Horse.
Behold a Pale Horse, yeah. So
I read that book. Total nonsense. Just absolute total nonsense. One conspiracy theory to another. I read through this. Just
I didn't read that
one of the
book.
worst books ever.
Yeah, I didn't read it, but I
read
chose
it.
Pale Horse.
Well,
Because,
I mean, I read some of it. At one point, I just gave up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point.
I'm referring to the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse.
Oh, that Pale Horse.
That
I'm
Pale
talking about the book, Behold a Pale Horse.
I'm saying.
Wow, this is straight hypocrisy, ladies and gentlemen. Books like Behold a Pale Horse are recruitment manuals for conspiratorial thinking. They turn paranoia into purpose. Read the reading list and you'll understand the roadmap from greenness to violence. Just straight rhetoric, conjecture, hate, you name it, it's in the book.
It's one of these conspiracy theories.
Yeah. So my book is codenamed Pale Horse, but I was Pale Horse in the base.
Got it.
And, upon the Pale Horse name was Death. It's the Grim Reaper.
Well, ultimately, the FBI came in and started arresting everybody.
Yes, we were able to get enough on the murder plots. We were able to get enough on Brian and Pat. And listen, Brian, Can't Go Back had a 6.5 Creedmoor with a $6,000 thermal scope on it. They were talking about, they built a ghost gun for Pat, who had absconded illegally into the United States from Canada because he was doxxed in Canada for being a white supremacist, a neo-Nazi. And at that time, he was a member of their version of National Guard. So he was being trained by their army. He was a member of that, and he got ousted for all that. So he illegally snuck into the United States. The base moved him and kept him hidden.
This is absolutely lunacy. Because one thing we have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that arrests don't happen by accident. That village he mentions, agents, analysts, prosecutors, is the reason that these plots don't go forward. This is teamwork, patience, and evidence collecting, working to save lives. I can't thank this guy enough for the amount of violence that he prevented.
So in his mind, he was a ghost. He could go kill whoever he wanted.
I mean, ultimately, the main members, how much time did they get?
I'm trying to remember the biggest lick. I don't know if a 12 was in there. I don't even know if there was a 10-year in there. It's probably going to disappoint your listeners to know the times weren't that big because of what we had to. But again, in domestic terrorism federally, there's not a statute. So I take you off for being a felon in possession. We take you off for murder plots, which is not federal, but we're going to prosecute you on the state level.
That's a good point that he made, because domestic terrorism laws are still weak in America. When he says sentences weren't big, that's a policy problem. Violent intent gets prosecuted on tangible charges, not on terrorism counts. That's a gap our system still needs to close. So again, people who have gone undercover are probably the best agents and voices to have a lot of these laws enacted and legislations passed regarding this.
We take you off for harboring an illegal alien, undocumented alien, however you want to say it. And that's what we ended up doing. And the way it played out was on a Wednesday in January of 2020, I went and picked up Luke, TMB, because he lived on a 100-acre farm. So, I mean, it's 100 acres. He has a farm. They had a barn that they converted into a living space and a house. Everything else is wide open. So from an arrest standpoint, it'd be kind of hard to sneak up without other people knowing coming into that area. So I did a ruse where I picked up Luke to take him to lunch and feigned that my truck was having issues, pulled over on the side of the road. I was working on my truck, and the SWAT team hit him. And then we arrested the rest of the members of the Georgia cell, but we kept it quiet because Thursday morning SWAT teams were going to hit Pat and Brian and another member named Eisen. Go ahead.
Now, once again, I applaud this undercover agent, Scott Payne, for the tremendous work that he's done. I'm pretty sure he's retired now. And I'll leave the link to this full video to give Vlad his credit on this. But undercover work often ends with a ruse. And that's what he was getting at prior to what he was stating, in order to have this detainment or incarceration to occur. But it ends with a ruse. It gets the target isolated, then they move in. It's a very dangerous, precise, and controlled. And it's the moment that the evidence turns into arrest, preventing the next attack. And as I stated before, we need 1,000 more of people who can infiltrate a lot of these hate groups, no matter what their plot is, whether it be anti-Black, anti-Jew, anti-liberal, anti-conservative. It doesn't matter. We need people who are impartial to all these causes to go in and infiltrate and gather up these people and make sure they never see the light of day. Because at the end of the day, is not the cause, is that they want to harm innocent people based on hateful ideology.